What is real?
It's all in his mind.
How do you define real?
Purely psychosomatic. That boy needs therapy.
Beethoven had his critics too.
This is your life.
But it still hurts.
Stop trying to control everything and just let go.
I don't like the idea that I'm not in control of my life.
You know, we're living in a society.
That boy needs therapy.
We all do.
You know what divine intervention is?
It's your kids, Marty.
What's really going to bake your noodle later on is...
They didn't stop to think they should.
What just happened here was a miracle.
We all wear masks, metaphorically speaking.
So what are you gonna do about it?
You gotta grow up.
But how?
You have to let it all go to free your mind.
I'm scared.
That's a problem for future Homer. Man, I don't envy that guy.
Hi all, Nick here. Another week and another Shedding Pod episode. However, this week I'm cheating just a little bit. This is not episode 9 of Confessions of an Itchaholic, the serial episodic memoir mashup of season 1. That is coming. It's taking longer than I first planned. Remember, we left me in my mid-30s, a young, slightly munted first-time father having a near-death experience in hospital. Fun times. So, we had an interview episode last week, which I just loved, and yeah, the feedback from that was really amazing. So thank you from Kate and from myself. But yeah, so I'm delaying the final 2 episodes a touch. I've had a broken rib, which has been very painful. We also had a coast getaway for the school holidays, which was amazing. So good to get some beach time. My youngest caught a virus and has been running a temp for 3 days now. And my amazing wife, Kate, who you met last episode, is away for work for a few nights. So, yeah, those are the totally reasonable excuses that this episode is a resharing of an audio episode I did earlier in the year on my Substack on addiction.
I am not addicted to anything.
It's very much keeping with the theme of the first season of this podcast. I really do like this one, actually, and it was my most read and listened to essay on my Substack up until that point. So I've just refreshed it, made a few tweaks, and I'm dropping it on the pod feed for those who haven't heard it. Don't worry, this mini essay has the usual music lyrics, pseudo-intellectual musings, and pop psychology book quotes that you've come to expect here on Shedding Pod. Second last note, there is a thing that podcasters ask listeners to do, which is leave a review if you're enjoying the content. I never really wanted to be one of those people constantly asking about that, you know, like smash that like button and subscribe and all that. Like it just pisses me off. However, if you do leave a review on Apple or Spotify, it will build up to the point where the podcast actually gets a rating, because it doesn't have one at the moment. Like people have said they've reviewed or left a star rating. You don't have to write words necessarily, but there's not enough of them for it to actually show yet. So anyway, if you feel to, that would be appreciated. And final note, I've been watching The Simpsons with my 10-year-old. And we recently saw the Sherry Bobbins episode.
It's 8 o'clock, children. Time for bed.
But we're not sleepy. Sing us a song, Sherry Bobbins.
Which is a piss take of Mary Poppins, of course.
I've been singing you songs all day. I'm not a bloody jukebox.
It is very good. But I realised so much of The Simpsons is drinking booze. Like, it's quite incredible. Obviously, there's Barney, whose entire life revolves around his addiction. And arguably, it's the same with Homer. He drinks a lot of beer. It's like every episode is about beer. And then you've got Moe, who's like this coercive drug dealer, sort of pushing his so-called friends into writing themselves off in his bar. So I just had to play some of the song A Booze Hound Named Barney.
Buy me a beer, $2 a glass.
Because it's too good.
Come on, help me, I'm freezing my ass.
But it's interesting watching the expression of the culture of drinking and addiction through the eyes of my 10-year-old.
Move it, you truck, or I'll blast your rear end.
I found $2.
Then come in, my friend.
Who is like so innocent and doesn't really get it. But yeah, perhaps one day as an adult, he will be faced with his own battles to manage his dopaminergic system, as we all seem to.
Who am I kidding? How I'll drink turpentine.
Anyway, that's a good little run into this episode. I just wanted to fit that song in there pretty much. Thanks for listening. I hope you're all well and your ribs are substantially less fractured than mine. And I'll catch you in a week or so. Addiction. Nicotine, Valium, Vicodin, marijuana, ecstasy, and alcohol. Cocaine. On addiction, dopamine, and abstinence from alcohol. That music quote from the song Feel Good Hit of the Summer by Queens of the Stone Age, released in 2000. We, as in contemporary humans, live in a hyper-novel environment. A modern age of access to technology, resources and stimulants, uppers and downers and dopamine doublers that our forebears could only dream of. Humanity is striving for an ultimate attaining of the abundance that we have access to, at least in the West, means one of the great challenges of our generation is to abstain from reaching for this lavishness now it is instantly accessible to us. The abundance at my local Coles regularly gives me panic attacks. So much brightly coloured choice. Sugar, salt, fat, orgasms, Instagram likes. These things were rarefied in the ancient world, so we spent most of our times working hard to achieve them. Now we reach into the fridge, into the Ethernet, and into the Dan Murphy's shelf with ease to get whatever we want, whenever we want it. Sounds great. We can have whatever makes us feel good. We, liberal democratic capitalist societies, won the game of life. Insert Marge Simpson. Let's add into this equation porn, booze, drugs, gambling, culture war outrage, conspiratorial thinking, social media attention, all things to be drawn into dopamine modulators, compulsing us and sometimes addicting us. My first true, deep love in this world was sugar. Well, it was probably air, but thanks to my asthma, allergic sinus, and inflamed respiratory, that relationship has been more like a passive-aggressive marriage, more love-hate than true love. From the moment I discovered I was a being with free will and could make my own decisions, ignoring the coercive and predatory sugary cereal advertising infecting my worldview during those 80s and 90s cartoons. Many of the decisions I did make would involve secret rendezvous with my sweet lover.
Remember this?
Even now, she's like an ex who breezes into town and drops a, "Do you want to catch up?" WhatsApp.
6 months ago, you're eating 4 of those for breakfast and chasing it with a ring ding.
All my resolve to never cheat on my health goals evaporates in the face of her seductive power.
You remember that night I found you at Dinky Donuts? You're all hopped up on cinnamon swirls.
Like John McClane in Nakatomi Plaza.
These are very bad for you.
Old sugar habits don't simply die hard. They never f***ing die. Sure, I would find out decades after starting this ill-fated tryst that my faulty hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, say that 5 times fast whilst patting your head and rubbing your belly, was partially to blame, and the steroids I eventually took to suppress my inflamed carcass of a body would exert extreme pressure on my non-existent willpower to just have one more Tim Tam. Cortisol and steroids take glucose into the bloodstream, and if they don't find any glucose to take, your body craves like crazy to consume some. I would not discover these things in enough time to prevent putting my dentist kids through private school.
He's putting my kids through college.
I hope those kids learn about self-control and willpower. Also, I'm not making excuses. I am a creature who has struggled with delayed gratification, which it turns out is an important marker of potential lifetime success, the ability to take the longer view rather than the immediate hit of pleasure. This is really the most charitable rendition of self-labelling that I can muster when it comes to addiction. So let's be more real. I have been a scoundrel, a dopamine fiend, a limbic system hijacker. I've done it all. Well, most of it. I've drunk many times from the elixir of good feelings, sneaking back into the forbidden garden for another cup, hoping no one was looking. Most of the fun actually ends when you realise that no one is looking, except your own sense of self-hatred peering down like an omnipotent god in judgment as you slide off the couch half drunk full of nacho cheese Doritos. Yet, like the calm ocean stretching before me after navigating a large storm, I can now look back on these tempestuous addictions with some clarity and peace, understanding them as the coping mechanisms that they were, and in some cases still are. Work in progress and all that. This essay does not seek atonement, nor absolution. My continued faultiness apparently knows no bounds. Music quote, "I'm gonna live like tomorrow doesn't exist, like it doesn't exist." End quote. From the song Chandelier by Sia, released in 2014. When I was growing up in our emerging middle-class Anglo family, it was always alcohol. Ethanol was our libation. As Al Green sang in 71, quote, "Whether times are good or bad, happy or sad," end quote. Booze was the soother. My extended family has a history of alcoholism. Some of them were champions of AA after getting on the wagon permanently. Some were addicted and abusive, the demon drink unlocking the rage within. Some battled largely solo until the end, never fully getting out from underneath. Some probably still battle, largely hidden. I found alcohol when I was 15 or 16. It was a method I used to give me energy, be more fun, and hide from the darker parts of myself that I was yet to fully understand. I was a teen who lacked connection and was isolated by my chronic health battles. And booze was the perfect socially acceptable foil to that loneliness. Once in the full swing of adult life, like late teens, early 20s, I had a tendency to want to keep the party going. It wasn't necessarily a real party. I mean, sometimes it was. It was more the party of feeling good or feeling free from myself for a brief time. Released, however briefly, from a tightly held nervous system by the suppressive nature of alcohol. Booze is, of course, a neurotoxin, and it mimics the GABA neurotransmitter in the brain, creating that soothing and calming effect that we all chase, as well as boosting dopamine and serotonin, other feel-good neurotransmitters. I didn't want to let go of those feelings, despite knowing they would pass. They used to pass somewhere between the second and fourth beer, but that wouldn't stop my continued chase. Because they, the good feelings, seemed rare in a life filled with confusion and ill health. As we all know, the buzz of booze, or sugar, or opioids doesn't last long. This too shall pass, and all that. But not if I have another beer, or take another pill. Haha, take that, come down anxiety hangover. I've got your measure. But, as Queens of the Stone Age sang in 2001, first it giveth, then it taketh away. It's all fun and games when you're on the roller coaster. It's when you step off that the nausea starts. About 5 years ago, I had a very profound experience that altered my relationship with alcohol, and I'm going to write more about that another time. Someone with as ridiculous a body as mine, navigating multiple chronic health issues since I landed on this fine blue planet, should probably never have drunk alcohol, but I did for 20 years no less. But the 5 years I spent without drinking has been a revelation. My sister stopped drinking about a year ago too. It's not that she was a frequent or even heavy drinker, yet booze was something that, like me in the past, was always there. In recent conversations with her, she has expressed a deep personal awakening and a sense of internal clarity and purpose in her life that feels revelatory. The simple freedoms of not having to track how many have I had, of never worrying about who's going to drive home, of never feeling out of control or did I say the wrong thing at that work catch-up, have created a lightness in her mental scape and an increased ability to respond to life with a deeper sense of calm. Let's not forget the freedom of a double shot of dehydrating coffee on Sunday morning without needing to swig 2 litres of H2O to replenish what was lost the night before. These kinds of experiences, freedom from the grasp of alcohol, are being well documented in various podcasts like How I Quit Alcohol and Sober Awkward, and books and Substack posts as people share their stories of facing themselves and the breaking of some of the patterns of compulsion and addiction that they, like me, clung to for so long. I don't believe it's possible to easily untangle the facing of lifelong compulsions and addictions like alcohol use without correlating that with personal healing, which I would define as increasing our awareness of ourselves, our past, and our patterns of behaviour, and the impact of those patterns on those around us in the pursuit of being better people. Music quote: "There is a house way down in New Orleans they call the Rising Sun, and it's been the ruin of many a poor boy, and God, I know I'm one." End quote. From the song House of the Rising Sun by The Animals, released in 1964. Sure, the House of the Rising Sun may have been a symbolic rather than real place, and it was probably a brothel, but they definitely served booze there, along with other hedonistic pleasures. Also, there is something in the name. We've all watched the sun rise after a big night, and too much reaching for those pleasures. See it again. Quote, "I'm just holding on for tonight." End quote. For many, myself included, the conscious regulating of our complex nervous system after much dysregulation is a revelation. I mean, shitballs. It can be hard though, losing ourselves whilst finding ourselves. When does desire for pleasure or compulsion for coping turn into addiction? In her book Dopamine Nation, Anna Lemke defines addiction as, quote, the sustained compulsive use of a substance or behavior, even though it causes harm to you and those around you, end quote. You keep choosing it despite the pain of the hangover. She writes at length about how our pursuit of pleasure paradoxically leaves us in more pain. Quote, the pursuit of pleasure for its own sake leads to anhedonia, which is the inability to enjoy pleasure of any kind, end quote. We desensitize our ability for pleasure by sneaking into the forbidden garden of delights too many times. This tracks for my half-decade journey of relative abstinence as I seek balance and self-regulation. I feel my pain more, but I'm more able to feel joy, delight, and wonder in smaller ways more frequently too, not needing the sledgehammer of a bottle of wine to break through my previously dull pleasure barrier. Now, I certainly am in no position to judge anyone for their drinking or debauchery, my own soapbox being stained with spilled bourbon, my high horse doped up on painkillers and nerve system suppressants. Everybody is looking to alter their states, often to hide from the anxiety of living life and the complexity of being a modern person. I have much sympathy for this. As Gabor Mate puts it in his book about addiction in the realm of hungry ghosts, quote, boredom, rooted in a fundamental discomfort with the self, is one of the least tolerable mental states. It is impossible to understand addiction without asking what relief the addict finds in the addictive behaviour, end quote. But we also do this to have fun and be silly. Everyone wants to care less, be more childlike, and have more joy. And that's often why we drink, chasing a less adult state. I get it. Personally now, I get much of my silliness out these days by playing with my kids. If you've ever spent time with a 4-year-old, most things are funny to them, and then challenging, and then awful, and then funny again. It's a wild ride. Also, I've been an insomniac or a light sleeper since before I was born. The fluttering of a moth landing on a wall 3 rooms over enough to tear me from my hard-fought slumber. There is much research showing that alcohol has a detrimental effect on sleep, and continual alcohol use literally reduces the amount of grey matter in your brain, given deep sleep cycles are when the body rejuvenates our brain. This reminds me of the Seinfeld bit, where Jerry opines that we humans had to invent helmets due to an unwillingness to cease our
Head-cracking lifestyle.
But when people still didn't wear them, we had to legislate this in order to, quote, preserve a brain whose judgment is so poor it doesn't even try to
Stop the cracking of the head it's in!
end quote. Even evidence of our literal shriveling grey matter isn't enough to ease the reaching, coping, consuming. Reaffirming, however anecdotally, the grey matter findings. Once I've stopped drinking, my own sense of rising intellect has felt meteoric. Now, I'm not saying that I am smart or an intellectual or any of that. I'm just saying compare 6 years ago me to now, and it really is chalk and cheese regarding my memory, my reading habits, and my ability to function on a Sunday morning. Music quote, crying to the heavens, find me in the present, baby I forgive ya, angel in the mirror, end quote. From the song Saturn Returning by Angie McMahon, released in 2023. What is left when we look at, understand, regulate, and even abstain from the cycle of hedonistic addiction, even if we can't fully escape it? Ourselves. More of ourselves. Some sort of raw truth about who we are and what we are doing here, hidden underneath all of the getting high and escaping. Then, perhaps we can move to a place where the more that we want now that the hollow sound of the empty wine glass rings out can be more meaning or more connection, rather than simply more feel good. Novelist David Foster Wallace puts it this way, quote, everybody worships. The only choice we get is what to worship, end quote. Sure, he was talking spiritually, but I'm going to have the gall to apply this to other types of worship, like compulsively looking at our phones, being negative about our friends in our heads, stressing about the future, or reaching for another cold beer. Whatever it is that takes up the most space in your mind is what your life will become. That's what you're worshipping with your most precious resource, your attention. He goes on to say that, quote, anything else you worship will eat you alive, end quote, such as money and things, your body, beauty, sexual allure, etc. It will never be enough. Or as Renton from Trainspotting puts it,
Choose your future, choose life.
just, don't choose heroin. Back to alcohol. Your most glorious self, whoever that is, isn't one of slurred speech, the same old stories, shit sleep, limited mental capacity, and hungover days. It's a well-rested head with rejuvenated grey matter and balanced neurotransmitters. A deep and truly honest conversation with a close friend. Time and patience with your kids on a weekend morning. And a life more free from the nausea of the dopamine hijack roller coaster ride. Patent pending, coming to a theme park near you. I'm genuinely not hard on myself about my previous misdeeds. Even John Butler used to get high for a living. Everyone is undergoing a long process of self-discovery, even if we don't know it. And part of my journey has been to understand ever so slowly my body and what it needs. Now, don't be scared. A more real version of yourself exists underneath all the hijacking. It can hurt more to feel more, and there will be pain. You're alive after all. Possibly more pain because you can't numb it as easily. But trust me, it's a more authentic version of yourself than you ever thought was possible. And authenticity is a value worth striving for. Addendum. Plus, if the one wish of much-loved Aussie super actress Cate Blanchett, the immortal Lady Galadriel herself, was a packet of Tim Tams
That never runs out.
which, let's face it, is my dream too. How can the rest of us mere mortals navigate modernity and its dopamine traps? No chance. But we've got to try.
Will you look into the mirror? What will I see?
That's a good question, Frodo.